Hi guys, welcome to SJ Masterclass, a podcast where two friends and avid readers are working to build an encyclopedia of the universe written by Sarah J. Maas, one series at a time, cross-referencing as we go through the text. We're going to discuss themes, characters, plot points throughout the Maasverse, and go wherever the conversation leads us. This week we are reviewing chapters 26 through 31, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm Rev, one of your hosts. I'm an ER nurse, knitter, lifelong reader, and a dog mom.
Hi guys, I'm Cat. I'm also one of your hosts. I'm an ER nurse by day, a cat mom, reader, and knitter the rest of the time. Each episode we're going to start with a brief review of the chapters that we're focusing on, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty details. This podcast will be extremely spoiler heavy for both ACOTAR and potentially the rest of Sarah J. Maas's works, so listen at your own risk. But we're excited to be a part of the best book club around and hope you enjoy coming with us. Rev, do you want to get us into the chapter summary for 26 through 31?
I do want to do a chapter summary, but first, I want to do fancast. I want to do Feyre, Nesta, and Elaine.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go first. Feyre is so obvious. I can't believe you didn't guess who this is, who I was going to choose. It's Jennifer Lawrence is Katniss in Hunger Games. I'm sending you the picture right now. You guys will be able to see these. We're going to post them on Instagram. Who is your favorite? And send me the picture now.
So my favorite is Ciri from the Witcher series.
They're not that much different. I mean, they're different, but like...
They're not that much different. They're very similar.
I can see it. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so good. Wait, what's her name? Her real name
Oh my gosh, her real name is Freya Allen.
I just saw it. Her real name is Freya.
She's literally made for this.
She's made for it. My next one is blonde Nikki Reed from the Twilight series as Rosalie Hale.
Oh.
This is so Nesta. This is how I see Nesta in my head.
Man, our Nestas look really similar. So there used to be a series. I was obsessed with it. I've told you about it, called Vampire Diaries. It had a spinoff called The Originals. Then that had a spinoff called Legacies. In Originals and Legacies, there was a character whose name was Hope Michelson. This is what she looks like. She is my Nesta.
Oh, dude, we are so on point up to now.
We are. I'm excited for your Elaine.
My Elaine is going to blow your mind. I don't think you are going to be like, oh, my Elaine is exactly like this. My Elaine is Alanis Morissette circa 1997.
Really?
Like, look at that picture I sent you.
Yeah.
It's very like Elaine vibes with like flowers in her hair and like just gardening, but like not when she's singing. Dogma style. I even looked up Dogma pictures and I was like, oh, that kind of is it, but like this picture fit better.
Mine is Francesca Bridgerton, the new reincarnation of her.
Man, our stuff is not that far off, Kat.
It's not that far off, and they're all kind of right there. Whoever's casting for this TV show, contact us.
Contact us. Okay, can I get in chapter summary?
I dare you to do it.
Starting with chapter 26. Rhys shows up in Springcourt and talks about the decapitated head that he left as a gift. He asks for Feyre's name, and she says, Clare Beddor.
Not hers.
We've heard that name before. Chapter 27, Tamlin tells Feyre he's decided to send her back home to the human lands, and she and Tamlin, quote, make love. Later, Feyre arrives home to an excited Elaine and a very reserved Nesta. I wonder why that is. Next, Feyre sees how much wealth Tamlin has sent her home with. I mean, we're talking about like suitcases or boxes or trunks or something full of like raw jewels. She hears about how the villages have received the family since Tamlin improved their lives. That's an interesting part of the story. Elaine tells Feyre that Nesta tried to come visit her while Feyre was away at their aunt's house. That's such a big deal, in my opinion. That's such a big deal. Feyre hands out coins to the local villagers. Even though they've like shunned their family for years, she still is generous enough to go hand those out. But we'll get into that later. Nesta tells Feyre that Tamlin's glamour did not work on her. Now we know why she's reserved. Verifies she did attempt to enter Prythian, and how much she also talks about how much she hates her father for everything he contributed or did not contribute to their circumstances. Last of all, Feyre decides to return to Spring Court, and when she arrives, she finds there's no one there and it appears abandoned. And that's where we end our reading for this week. Do you want to start us off by getting into the details?
I absolutely do. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, like one of the book club questions I had, is a little bit about these parts, but something that I've kind of been thinking about for the last few chapters. Do you think the Blight is another name for Amarantha? Or is it a part of the curse? Or is it something different? What is the Blight that they've been talking about for the last 20 chapters?
My opinion is the Blight are the symptoms of the curse that Amarantha has placed on Prythian. The Blight is like everything that we see happening with the High Lord's inability to control their courts / possibly High Lords not even being present in their court, right? Because they're under the mountain. But I do think when we talk about Blight, it is also synonymous with Amarantha because one doesn't come without the other.
I think similarly because it definitely feels like at times when they are referring to the Blight, especially Lucien and Tamlin, they are referring specifically to Amarantha. But I feel like as I've done these chapters in this read, I'm viewing the Blight as a vague term for both Amarantha and her wave of evil. And I think we'll get into it in this discussion. But during these chapters, I definitely felt like the Blight was referring to the consequences of the curse. But if we're going to start getting into the nitty gritty of this, what's your pen?
The reason I think that when they talk about the Blight, especially like you referred to Tamlin and Lucien, and it refers to Amarantha, it's because one of the symptoms of the Blight is Beauty and the Beast. They can't talk about Beauty and the Beast, so they just have to say the Blight as a large general term. I think that's why it also refers to Amarantha, because they can't really, by the rules of the game, talk about any of it. It's Fight Club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Let's get into the nitty gritty of these chapters. We have to talk about this first Tamlin Rhysand meeting. Let's just jump straight into chapter 26. Wow.
Yeah.
We learn so much about Tamlin and Rhysand and Lucien just in these interactions. First things we learn is that Rhysand and Tamlin have not seen one another in 49 years, which leans into Rhysand being under the mountain for 49 years. Something is different this year. He's able to come out. We learned that Tamlin and Rhysand used to be friends. He says something along the lines of, how do you think he learned how to get with the ladies? And how do you think he learned other things in war? And he threatens the lady of the Autumn Court, and Lucien stands down. That's the time when he falters. And we have this realization that Lucien very much loves his mother, even though he has been exiled from the Autumn Court. And later on, in the third book, during the High Lord meeting, when there's this big ruckus, Eris also stands in front of the Lady of the Autumn Court to protect her. So those boys love their mother.
Okay, so when I think about one of the first things you mentioned was Tamlin and Rhysand used to be friends. We know 400 level modern lit class. We know in the future we find out everybody killed each other's family and has souvenirs or whatever. But why are Rhysand and Tamlin not friends anymore? Is it because Tamlin had a crush on his sister and that's why we have Starlight Pond? That's just a little throwback.
I feel like the reason they are not friends anymore is because Tamlin's father and Tamlin killed Rhysand's mom and sister.
But which came first? We don't know.
We don't know.
Why would his dad have killed Rhys's sister? Because Tamlin had a crush on her?
I think it's because they thought Rhysand was going to be there. Rhysand was late showing up, and instead they were already there. They killed the two of them, and that's why Rhysand and his father went and killed Tamlin's brothers and Tamlin's father.
It doesn't rule out that maybe he had a crush.
Sure.
And that has something to do with it, because he wasn't supposed to be the ruler of the court. He was supposed to be a warrior. So you would think that would give him freedom to have a crush on or marry somebody less proper for the
But
High
still
Lord
part
of the
of
Spring
the
Court.
high level.
It is the UK. I already have some other things that want to talk about that. But like, if you are royalty, or I think it's noble, she would still be appropriate because she's like a noble person born of high blood or whatever.
And that goes with Lucien, because the problem that Baron sees with the woman that he fell in love with, she was a commoner. And even Rhys references her now. She was a commoner, and he's like, you certainly have a type.
The other one of my points is talking about the relationship between Rhys and Tamlin. This is going to lead into another point, is how he makes Tamlin get down on the ground on his knees and beg. And he does it in front of Feyre. And then he is so overwhelming with his flexes on Lucien. Like, at one point he is talking and he stops and he looks at the table, runs his finger over the chair, smells the goblet that she was drinking out of, and then gets this look on his face and is suddenly lunging and is right in his face, and then brushes him to the side. Does he at this point know that Feyre's his mate and these guys are standing between him and his mate? He has to be so mean and derogatory to her because he doesn't want Amarantha to do anything to her. But the way that he flexes and the way he's so angry, it's like he at one point instantly gets a snarl of fury and anger on his face. And I think it's when he's looking at Lucien. And that's because Lucien is standing between him and Feyre. But how does he flex on them without letting Amarantha in on the secret that Feyre is his mate?
I have a lot of thoughts. Okay.
I know.
So I just want to say this is one of the reasons why I love this podcast and what we're doing, because we are reading the same text and we are coming away with completely different reactions and getting to the same point, because obviously we all end at the same point of the book. I love, because I have read this whole scene completely different. So let me just tell you how I'm reading it. Why is Rhysand flexing so hard on Tamlin? The whole blight and the curse is happening because of Tamlin. I think it was something like he refused to be with Amarantha. I think it was something like she wanted to be with Tamlin and he wouldn't do it. And then the curse was put on them. So all of the other High Lords are under the mountain. And this is the first time that Rhys and Tamlin have seen each other in 49 years. And he is playing around with a human. He can fix this curse and he's not doing it. I don't think this is Rhys getting angry that Tamlin is with his mate, because as I've been thinking about this, part of the significance of when Rhys stumbles at the end of this book is because that is when he feels the mating bond. So I think he doesn't realize that she's his mate. He has dreams about her, but he hasn't made the connection yet until they're under the mountain and he has more interactions with her. I think the flex is because he can. He is the strongest High Lord even amongst those under the mountain, because Amarantha's given him more power. When we see the spark of anger that you were talking about against Lucien, that's when Lucien is trying to throw his weight. It's on page 236. So the quote is, "I was slaughtering on the battlefield before you were even born," Rhysand snarled. And then as quickly as he had come, he withdrew, casual and careless. This is one of the few times where we see the veneer slip. And he's like, I'm cool and controlled. As you said, I'm Amarantha's whore. Nothing can stick to me. But what we find out even later is he was fighting on the battlefield and he was fighting with the humans. He was fighting with Jurian. I think this whole scene is Rhysand's like, you are the reason we're in this situation. Do your job. Oh, you have this human. Do your job. But then the fact that Tamlin thought he was stronger than the strongest High Lord and was able to glamour him into not knowing Feyre was there, like the audacity of him. And that is just another point where Rhysand is like, really? You think to glamour me? Like, one of his main powers is mind games. Yeah, go for your pin.
On page 251, Feyre feels wrong for Tamlin because she would grow old and die. But then she goes back to the human lands and she decides to return back to Spring Court anyway to save Tamlin. Remember we talked about when she was at Calamai and she felt the drums and the bond pulling her in? Does she actually return to Spring Court to save Tamlin? Or is it because she feels something inside about this mating bond, maybe doesn't realize it's Rhysand, and is misplacing that feeling on Tamlin and comes back because she's feeling that mating bond, that tug, just like it pulled her out to Calamai?
I'm going to give you another option because this was one of my book club questions I wanted to ask.
Of course.
Do you think Feyre would have gone back to Prythian if Clare Beddor had not been killed? It's only after she finds out about Clare that she's like, oh, there's something going on with Tamlin. This is bigger than I thought. I have to go back. This was supposed to be my family. This is almost like the turning point, because I agree. She has the feelings that he's going to stay young. I'm going to get old. It goes back to what I was saying a couple of episodes ago, where this is that vampire trope, right? Like the conflict of vampire romances is one will get old and age and die. The other one will stay young forever. Essentially what's happening here. But she's been feeling this guilt and this pull. So maybe it is the mating bond, but we don't know what's happening with this mating bond because Rhys might not be feeling it. Feyre might, because there's something going on with Feyre, but it is Clare Beddor's death or disappearance that is the turning point for her. Yeah.
The thing that happens at the same time that we are learning through these chapters about Clare Beddor's house being burned down, her family being killed, there's no survivors. And then that Feyre's thinking that might also happen to my family. At the same time, Nesta is talking to her about what their father did and did not do for their mother. And she points out, you would have gone to the ends of the earth for your High Lord. And so maybe Feyre has these feelings about her mate being there and doesn't understand that it is misplaced on Tamlin. So she goes back to save Tamlin. But really, when Nesta's asking her about, you wouldn't have let your High Lord do that, she doesn't understand the difference between the brain and the heart. The brain is thinking Tamlin, but the heart and the soul know that her mate is back there. And she's like, you're right. I will not be like my dad. I will not give up. I will not let this happen to my family. I will go back. I will save everything.
It's like the Suriel said, stay with the High Lord. And he tells her later on, I told you to stay with the High Lord, which is another one of my book club book questions. We're just kind of going through them all. If we did not have books 2, 3, the novella, and Silver Flame, would you be reading it differently? Because we did. We were all rooting for Tamlin. But how much of what we're saying now is the Charlie Day red string on the board? Because it's like you can't watch a Titanic movie without knowing how it ends. You can't read Throne of Glass and think, oh, who is she going to end up with? Dorian or Chaol, when you know the ending. Those first couple of books change their perspective. Reading this now, we are looking at this with such specific knowledge.
400 level modern lit.
Mm-hmm. But you were mentioning their father and Nesta and like the whole kind of, we're jumping a couple of chapters to when she's in the human lands. There is a scene when the father says, I'm thinking of buying the Beddor lands. And Elaine is like nodding her head in agreement and saying, yes, you absolutely need to do this. And Feyre realizes what happens and she thinks to herself, Nesta's eyes are already on me. Nesta is not saying, yes, buy this. There is something about Nesta in these chapters versus Elaine in these chapters. And Elaine and their father are so similar. There's reference to how the cooks and how the gardeners and how the servants all dote around Elaine. They are not good people. They are picking up the leftovers of what they can and trying to make money off of it. Nesta doesn't want anything to do with this.
We are kind of on this topic, and I agree with you that they are not good people. This is why I think we talk about so much about like A Court of Wings and Ruin, compared to how they feel about their dad now is so much different. And how literally Feyre, Nesta, and Elaine are all three different people by the time we get there because of what happens in the cauldron, and we're jumping forward. But we're talking about how a lot of them are not good people right now. But I think this is where we see that Nesta is a good person. We are going to see Nesta become the boss bee.
When I hear people talk about how horrible Nesta is, I want to point them to chapter 30. This is the girl who left and went after her sister, but couldn't because of Fey magic. This is the girl that broke up with her boyfriend because he would not go with her to save her sister. This is the girl who was so strong-willed, she was able to withstand Fey glamoring, something that we learn later within this chapter chunk that Rhysand was not able to do immediately. A human was able to withstand Tamlin's power, unless the reason why is because his power is dwindling. He glamored Rhysand momentarily. That is how strong this girl loves her family. And when you realize why she doesn't forgive or understand her father, it's because he had all of this money, all of these ships, and he didn't do anything to save his wife, her mother. I get it. The selfishness of this man.
This is like leading into the point that I was getting into. It is Nesta's honesty. She talks about glamour not working on her, going to save Feyre, and why she wanted to spend all their money. Because she wanted to provoke her father into a position to like have to stick up for them because of how angry she is about how basically her mom was treated, the one she's compared to the most, right? She's the most like their mom. And then at the same time, she keeps a piece of the painted table and throws it down. Not like in a disrespectful way, but she's like, I'm angry. I keep thinking about this. And the way that I transform this, sorry, this is going to get into my ER nurse thinking, is let's talk about trauma responses, right? We have fight or flight or freeze. And obviously, Nesta is always fight. Feyre, as we have seen, she's a flight. She fled. Mm-hmm. Even though it was at his request, she acquiesced. She fled from Springcourt. And I think that explains a lot about Elaine. I think Elaine is freeze. She can't react at all. She just freezes and pretends nothing is going on. So what are your thoughts about that?
When you were talking about how Nesta has the piece of wood that had the foxglove painted on it and she throws it down. First of all, while she was in Prythian the whole time, Feyre was thinking, I bet Nesta's happy I'm gone. I bet they don't even remember me.
Remember how we were talking about what the bogey? No, is the puka. The puka turned into her sister's crying, and we had a debate about that.
Right. And even when she's not around things that are going to inspire that, she's thinking, they're just going to think I'm dead. Are they going to even remember me? Elaine and her father remember her, but she's out of sight, out of mind. Nobody recognizes her. But Nesta took a piece of their home with her, took that wood with her, and is like, I remember everything. I remember what you did, and I hated you for it because you made it so that he wasn't doing what he needed to do. But she keeps this piece of home with her. Later on in the chapter chunk, when Feyre goes back to the village and she sees their cottage, she's talking about how Elaine viewed it as shelter and Elaine viewed it as hope. She viewed it as a prison and she viewed it as hell. And she even says, in Prythian, or thinks in Prythian, my home is hell. Nesta took a piece of that shelter, that hope, that hell, that prison with her. She never let it go. And I think that says so much about her character, because she knows who she is. She knows where she came from, and she's not going to forget it. She's not going to ignore it. And I feel like Elaine makes a comment how it was a little bit weird, how everybody acted like they were gone for 8 years, but she goes straight back into society. It's Nesta who pulls back. And Nesta is acting like what Elaine does when they become Fae. When they become Fae after the cauldron, Elaine is the one who's withdrawn. Elaine is the one who can't seem to acclimate. Nesta accepts the fact that I can't fix this. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. It's such a good Nesta chapter.
I don't know if you know. I've never said it before. I'm a fan of Nesta.
You are. And there's one line that I love, which was on page 253 of Feyre's thinking about Nesta. She'd been made differently, from something stronger and harder than bone and blood. She was as different from the humans around us as I had become. But Nesta never left. Feyre had to leave to become what Nesta was born as.
Nesta's
this girl,
a boss.
She knows who she is.
I have no words. I can't.
This is such a good Archeron chapter, or this chapter chunk, because we learned so much about them.
It was necessary for the author to do that, right? To go back home and touch base again after Feyre has had a little bit of growth of her character, to go back home and explore those relationships again as a more mature person. And then, even though it's still from Feyre's perspective, we get to learn a little bit more information about these characters that's a little bit more accurate because she's a little bit more mature. Her Maslow's hierarchy, minimum needs have been met. She sees things in a little bit of a better light. So we are learning more about these characters true to themselves versus just from Feyre's not having any needs met perspective.
I'll tell you what I wish we had gotten in Silver Flames is more of Nesta's history while Feyre was gone. Because even this part is all through Feyre's perspective, and we learn she wasn't right. The times when she's thinking, oh, I bet they're happy I'm gone. Oh, I bet they're never going to remember me. Nesta never forgot. Elaine and her father did, but Nesta remembered.
Page 250, right? She blames Tamlin and Lucien for not being transparent. This is when Lucien is disappointed in Feyre that she didn't solve the B&B riddle as she's going home. She blames herself for not asking more questions. Like, why didn't I ask more? What changes her perspective here? I think it is, again, after Nesta's conversation on page 267, she realizes, as you mentioned before in a previous episode, she let herself go soft in Spring Court. No one forced that on her. But then she gets back to the human lands, and on pages 261 and 262, she's having to endure some stares from people who shunned their family and treated them like trash. And then she hears about the Clare Beddor household. Being in the human lands is what made her hard to start. Going to the Feylands, the Spring Court, is what made her soft again. By her choice. It didn't happen to her. Tamlin didn't do that to her. She goes back to the human lands, again, not her choice, and blooms again, gets that part of her back to herself that she comes back. That explains a little bit about Elaine and her father, which I hate both of them. We both know that. But is there some amount of explanation there of why they're both so soft and helpless, at least from here on out, that they've been glamored and they are just not strong enough people? They just kind of go with the flow and they're soft. I don't know.
The only time Elaine realizes what is happening is when Feyre says, I went to Prythian, I did all these things, and then it's like a veil is lifted. And Elaine has the horses ready, has food prepped, but we don't see her father again. Her father is not there to see her leave. It's her two sisters. It's Nesta who says, Dad told you don't come back. I'm telling you don't come back. And it's a completely different understanding. And Elaine is the one who's still in that high society world, but she understands a little bit more about how they got there. We see Feyre make a point of going back to her forest. We see her going back to the cottage. And you're right, she has to kind of re-harden herself. She makes a comment about how she has a glow about her because the magic of Prythian is still on her. She hasn't fully left it until she starts talking to Nesta and realizes what's going on, or realizes who Nesta actually is.
A little bit more about who Feyre really is. Thorns and Roses of the title is actively defined by SJM in a single chapter, just a couple pages apart. It's the same chapter that they're both mentioned. She talks about herself as the thorns, then talks about him and his rose gardens. It's very obvious what SJM is talking about. I remember this topic being very clear in this book. I don't remember the names of the next books being talked about by the author so blatantly.
I don't either. And do you think that is because it's the first in the series? She didn't know if it was going to go on. So, it's kind of like, when you watch a movie, or if you're reading Lord of the Rings, and it's not until they have the Council of Elrond that they say, there's only one Lord of the Rings. And you're like, there it is. That's what we're reading. We're watching. Do you think that that is what she's doing with this book, where she's being like, in this one chapter, you've got your court, spring court, your roses, your thorns, put it all together. I can't say this is a court of thorns and roses, but I can say this is a court of roses and she's the thorns and he still loves her for it. Although I do want to pay attention to the next book and see, where does the mist come in? Where's the fury? What does the fury mean? What does the mist mean? And just be more attentive to that, because I've been so much more aware of what I'm reading while we're looking through the lens of the podcast. I want to see what that looks like for the next books.
We've discussed at length about, is Tamlin faking or is Tamlin for real? And I want to turn to 243. This is where Tamlin sends Feyre home, and I think some of the details of this changed my mind about Tamlin faking 100% of the relationship. He takes on her treaty debt of life, and he also gives up on the B&B plot. And not only is he so committed to giving up on the B&B plot to save Feyre's life, he's so convinced of it that Alice is also willing to go along with it. On 249, Alice says, make the most of your freedom. She doesn't fight it. She supports Feyre going back. Do we have to rethink how much Tamlin actually loves Feyre, because he's willing to give up B&B and put the entire Prythian up for getting destroyed to let her go home and be safe and to protect her? And I don't think this is a long-term game, because he sends her home with all these raw jewels, all of this wealth, and the fact that he didn't have a plan in face. There's not a fairy that comes and convinces her to change her mind. It's her sister, Nesta, that convinces her to change her mind. So this is not part of Tamlin's plot. This is Nesta not being fooled by Tamlin. This is Nesta telling her, don't be like our dad. You would fight for what you wanted. This has nothing to do with Tamlin. So Tamlin gave her up for her safety, not for the sake of B&B plot. Alice even went along with it, and we've discussed ad nauseum. Alice knows what the F is up. Go.
I've got two things. How much of the Beauty and the Beast plot has he given up? Because part of Disney's Beauty and the Beast is the Beast lets her go to her father. He lets her go back to the village. That's when Gaston sees the mirror. I mean, it's kind of sticking with the Beauty and the Beast plot from Disney's perspective, which Sarah J. Maas is the right age. We all grew up with it. But I want to focus on when you talk about he took her life debt and he says, I don't care what they think. Who is they? The treaty? The treaty's not a they. Why is this suddenly like, he says it on 243. I've taken your life debt. If they have a problem with it, they can tell me. Who is they?
Yeah, you're
Amarantha?
really right. I have not really thought of that. Who is enforcing the Fey Treaty? How have we not talked about that before now? Who is enforcing this?
And going back to Nesta, she's the one who says he was talking about some nonsense treaty. This goes back to what you were saying in episode 1.
The Declaration of Independence.
You were saying, like, why isn't anyone talking about the treaty? Nesta the whole time was thinking, what is he talking about? There's this nonsense about a treaty. We don't deal with that. We are just common people living in a house.
After this book, do we ever hear about the treaty again?
I don't know.
Is
I
the
think
treaty
we must,
even a real thing?
I do just want to make a note that on page 232, before she goes back to the Fey lands, Feyre wonders if an emissary is another word for a spymaster, which is what Asriel is to Rhysand's court, which goes back to last episode where I asked if they were the same. It is kind of confirmed that they are. So does that mean that when Lucien leaves, the Spring Court has lost not only its emissary, but also the person who's going to know all of the secrets within its own court? What is your pin?
I have page 232. Lucien is a spy master, like Asriel, just like Kat said before. Why does SJM make them so similar? And I think that kind of is a question to answer your question, because it explains why the Night Court is so successful and why the Spring Court cannot be successful. Because now, not only does the Night Court have Asriel, who is their spy master, they also have Lucien on their team, and now Spring Court has no one. To tag on to that, it is said when Lucien is talking about him being a spy master, he says his contact in Winter Court has reported there's several Fey children lost to the Blight. Night Court remains unscathed. Why would Amarantha let that story remain in place about Night Court being unscathed if she has power over Rhysand? Because she wants everyone to know she's all powerful. Why is the story still circulating about Winter Court being so affected by the Blight? It's so many questions braided together into one big idea. Please go.
Okay, so I'm going to address the first thing, which is why the Night Court goes unscathed. Because Rhysand is Amarantha's pet. We know that under the mountain, he's the villain. He gets more privileges than the other High Lords and everyone there. And he's doing all of this to keep Valeris safe. So he's going to do all of the things that he doesn't necessarily want to do. He's going to kill Clare Beddor's family. He's going to torture Clare. And we see her body hanging up. We see him do these things that the Rhys we learn later on would not be doing. So as payment for him, the Night Court doesn't get touched. But this also makes me go to your other point about Lucien in the Night Court. When Rhysand is in with them talking and he says, this is why your court's a problem, is because you don't hold rank or you don't enforce rank. When we think of the inner circle, at least me, I don't think of them having ranks. I think of them just being one big happy family. But when Rhys introduces them to Feyre, he introduces them all by rank. He introduces Cassian as his general. Asriel is his spy master. Mor is his second in command. And Amren is his third. Or maybe they're reversed. And she thinks, oh, how is a female your second? And he's like, if I'm gone and Cassian's gone and Asriel's gone, you don't want to deal with her. But they
I
all
love
have
that part.
ranks.
I remember that. Sorry to interrupt you. I remember that when we were reading, and like how much power and how much respect is given to Mor in the writing that SJM does. It's like, if I fail, if everyone else fails, Mor's there and she's going to clean house, is like how he phrases it, kind of.
But everybody knows their place. And we find out the reason why he gets trapped under the mountain is because he told Cassian and Asriel not to come with him, and there was no one to sip his drink. But why is the Night Court so much more successful? Because Rhysand's doing what he has to do. He's playing the game with Amarantha.
Is playing the game.
Tamlin's not. Tamlin's just staying in his castle. And Rhysand even says something like, you're just sitting around here. You're pathetic. You're not the High Lord that was fighting in the Great War. Well, the Spring Court is just there. Yeah, go for your pin.
I think the right way to say this is Tamlin was playing checkers while Rhysand was deciding to play chess.
Rhysand is looking at his court. Tamlin is looking out for himself.
Yeah, that's really, really a good point. The Night Court has remained unscathed, and Winter Court, all these people that are fighting back are losing. Rhysand is saying, I might be losing this battle, but I will win the war.
It's like when Lucien calls Tamlin Amarantha's whore, the first time we learn Amarantha's name. And Rhys is like, I might be her whore, but at least I have a warm bed, which is more than half of the people under the mountains. This is someone who's used to doing what he has to do for his court, and we don't see Tamlin doing it. That is why his court will never succeed. But while we're talking about the Winter Court and Lucien and the emissary, and we find out that the Blight has taken out 24 younglings and burned through their minds. This is why I was talking about the Blight earlier. When I hear it burned through their magic and tore their minds apart, that is Rhysand's power. Is he going to the Winter Court and killing these 24 younglings? Or is it a sickness that has taken over and done this to them? I don't think we ever find out, but an implication is there.
I think that the courts have historically been at each other's throats for so many centuries. I think like nobody's perfect. Like if their leaders were also strong enough, then their leaders could have also figured out a way to play chess and not checkers. But I don't know, like Rhysand is also in a place where he's not getting to make his own decisions. Every now and then he can sneak something by Amarantha, but it's few and far between, and maybe this is why he approaches Tamlin the way he does. I wish you guys would have tried your best as hard as I'm trying my best, because then I wouldn't have had to kill your people.
But I think also he's at year 49 of 50. If he isn't doing the things that he has to do, and if Tamlin doesn't get his act together, this is the rest of their lives. It's not like after 50 years, it's all going to go away. If that curse isn't lifted, it doesn't get lifted.
Yeah.
And that's pretty heavy.
Forever.
He's doing a lot for his people. Ugh, I tell ya. I know he is problematic, but I am a Rhys woman.
I only have 2 more really small things, and then we can finish the rest of the episode on your things. My first small thing is what I talked about earlier. I found more proof of your theory that Prythian is shaped like the UK, because on page 249, when Feyre is leaving the Spring Court and going back home, there's all these things like, this must be some mortal fashion among the wealthy. I expected to get a parasol. I have these lace gloves that are useless and flimsy. I also have this absurd little ivory hat. That sounds like a fascinator. Fascinator hats that are very specific to UK. American women, European women do not wear fascinators unless they've been invited to like a royal or something kind of event in London. And then the other thing is on page 256, Elaine talks about these bulbs. She pointed with a gloved hand. So can we just say, we've proven your point. She does
calluses.
wear gloves. No calluses. That's my next point. She wants Feyre to go with her to visit the tulip fields of the continent. So we know, looking at the Prythian map, the continent lies to the east/southeast of Prythian. So if Prythian is shaped like UK and the tulip fields are on the continent, doesn't that mean that the tulip fields are in the Netherlands?
Yes.
It just tracks with your prediction, I don't know how many episodes ago.
I'm going to pick up where you left off on 256. She would have marveled, likely wept, at the gardens I'd become so accustomed to, at the flowers in perpetual bloom at the Spring Court. Once again, thinking how well Elaine would have fit in to the Spring Court. But it's also mentioned a couple of times Like you said, she wants to go to the tulips and the continent. And then as Feyre's leaving, Elaine says, I really wish we could have gone to the continent together. I suspect her book will be going to the continent. And it'll have something to do with the Spring Court. That is my prediction. And then you mentioned the calluses. Do you think when Feyre is turned into a fae that she loses her calluses like someone else does in another book series?
I don't know. I mean, it would kind of track with Rhysand ordering the other two Illyrians. You might have heard of them. Their names are Cassian and Azriel, to train her in fighting and flying. And I think very specifically
to get them back.
Azriel, train her in fighting with weapons so that she can get them back. But I would like to see, because like when Aelin's remade could be the same as when Feyre is remade, and that both of them have to go through this retraining after they've had a rebirth into a new person, a new body, to get back or learn how to be like fighters. And there's so many mentions of calluses. It's not on accident. So yes, I'm going to say yes.
I have two more potential foreshadowings and one more Charlie Day crazy theory. The first foreshadowing is on 249 when she's coming down. They're in the Spring Court, and Lucien looks at her and he's like, those clothes are enough to convince me I never want to enter the human realm. And she says, I'm not sure the human realm would know what to do with you. He spends so much time in the human realm. Like this, I think, is leading towards my Pride and Prejudice plotline for him, where he's making these kind of cutting remarks just about humans in general.
To pull this back, when I was talking about Lucien saying, I thought you were smarter than this, and that Feyre should have figured it out, does he end up getting convinced after Feyre comes back from the human lands and wants to save everything, and then is like, yeah, I know I'm only a human? Does that then win Lucien's favor to be pro-human and be like, I've been proven wrong? I guess maybe I should give these people a little bit of credit and maybe try working with them, because what we've been doing hasn't been working 100%. And then he starts to branch out because he's an emissary. That is what kind of his special power is, his spy master power, just like Azriel. Let's reach out to people. And it's this interaction with Feyre that starts the chain reaction that ends up letting him go to the human lands and be with humans and make possibly, as Kat predicted, the biggest character arc in any book ever, that Lucien ends up with a human.
My next foreshadowing is 239 when Rhysand is with Tamlin and Feyre, and he kind of has her in his power, and he goes, if it's any consolation, she would have been the one for you, and you might have gotten away with it. A bit late, though. She's more stubborn than you are.
Yeah, I was wondering what... I have that highlighted, but I didn't put it in my notes because I couldn't figure out a good question or a good answer. So I'm happy you brought it up, because I just don't know. Like, what does that mean, actually?
I feel like that lends towards him not knowing that she's his mate. But I also feel like that is Rhysand saying, you had it. In this conversation, he uses the word stubborn 3 times in this whole chapter. I don't know what that means, but it's worth noting. But he's saying she was the one. She could have broken the curse. She was the one for you, and you blew it. I think it's foreshadowing. I think he knows they could have gotten out. And maybe they still will.
I honestly think it refers back to him not doing the right thing by keeping Feyre in the palace, in the Spring Court, when Calamai happens. He's like, you could have gotten away with this, and you could have married her, and I would never have known, Because we also know that at one point, I think in the future, he says, if that's what you would have wanted, I would have let you be and let you been happy. Tamlin could have landed that, but he fucked it up. But he could have saved it for everyone. He would have let that continue to happen if it would have made Feyre happy.
But on page 244, she's trying to convince Tamlin to let her stay. And he says, didn't you read between the lines today? What does he want her to know? Is it that Rhysand's more powerful than him? That Amarantha's more powerful than all of them? That there is more going on here? What is she supposed to have picked up in this whole interaction? I just feel like, I mean, like you said, people are playing checkers and people are playing chess. And when I see Rhysand saying, if it's any consolation, she would have been the one for you and you might have gotten away with it. A bit late, though. She's more stubborn than you are. I feel like that's him saying, you had it, you lost it, but also because I'm saying this out loud, maybe pick up what I'm saying.
You could have fixed it, but you effed it up because you've been playing checkers this whole time. And I've been taking these losses battle after battle after battle. I'm willing to lose all these battles to win the war. I was willing to do for my people what I've been doing for the past 50 years, but you went ahead and effed it up. So guess what? Now I'm going for it. Now it's mine.
Okay. I don't see him saying that. What I see is him being like, you had it and you lost it. But because I'm saying this out loud, maybe you can fix it. Because he doesn't say anything like, I'm going to go for it. The next thing he says is Amarantha's going to enjoy tearing her apart. But it's almost like he's giving his own little clue of like, she could have been the one. Her question should have been, the one for what? If she was smart and thinking, she should have been like, the one for what?
I'm reading the chapter differently. He's telling him, Amarantha is now going to tear her apart. And Rhys knows that she is his mate. He was willing to give up what is happiness for him for the betterment of every one of his people in the Night Court. He was willing to take the hit. He's now saying, well, you know what? I'm going for it. You've possibly destroyed things for everyone. So I'm going to do this one little thing, and that is get her. Because if you can't land the win, then why should I give her up? Now she's mine.
And this is why I love doing this podcast, because we are reading these same words, these same chapters, and coming away with completely different understandings of what's happening and different theories about it. I do want to say one little thing. I'm surprised you didn't mention it. She enters Prythian on a white horse and leaves on 6 white horses.
Dude, I didn't want to mention it because I did not want to beat a dead horse.
Pun intended.
See what I did there? Because I just keep seeing it. Just kind of like at some point, when am I going to stop talking about calluses?
Right. I just had to throw it out there. One of us did.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's everything I got. Rev, do you have anything else?
No, I think that finishes our episode. Next week, we're going to be reading chapters 32 through 35 of ACOTAR, and we get to meet Amarantha. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe below or wherever you get your podcasts. We can also be found on Instagram at SJ Masterclass, 2 A's in master, and by email at sjmasterclass@gmail.com. And we want to hear from you. What did you think of this episode? What did you think about our thoughts? Let us know in the comments
below or send us an email.
Do you want to go edit and maybe grab some marks?
I could go for a margarita right now.
How about I see you in 15 minutes?
See you then. Bye, guys.
Bye.